Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today, we're going to be starting a brand new series on the channel, that being Konosuba Mystic Rangers of Misfortune, based on the Heroes of the Morphing Grid series, Part 1. As always, if you're a fan of the channel and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. As we start this new series in the Heroes of the Morphing Grid franchise, there are a few questions that I know I'm going to get, and I'm going to try to answer those now. First, why didn't I use another series like Black Clover or Fairy Tail? Well, the answer for that is rather simple. I have not seen either one of those series, and to be perfectly honest, while I've heard some good things about Fairy Tail, I've also heard that it goes off the rails some point throughout the story, and I really wasn't sure of how I was going to deal with that if I ran into it. Also, the series is rather long in and of itself, and the last thing that I wanted to do is stretch out any more amounts of time than I've already done so far. Plus, with Black Clover, that's another series that's just wrapping up as well, and since not everything has been made clear about the anime and the manga's current status of the moment, I just felt that Konosuba was a nice balance in terms of having a mystic team, but also having something that can be a bit more lighthearted than anything else. Now, I do plan to do things with Black Clover in the future, and maybe with Fairy Tail if people really want it, but for now, I just felt like Konosuba was the best option. Also, how much am I going to cover in this series? We are going to be doing the first 2 seasons of Konosuba along with the movie, and that will lead directly into the crossover event. Now, with this series, much like a lot of others that I have on the channel, after the major crossover events, a few of my series will continue on. Others will come to an end, as there will be other things that I want to focus on going into the winter and fall of 2022. Now, that's not to say that Konosuba can't be revisited in the future, since we do know that there is going to be a Konosuba Season 3 and a spin-off coming out in the near future as well. But still though, for now, our main focus is getting through the current source material that we have. So I'm just going to be focusing on trying to get through the first 2 seasons along with the movie. If I can do multiple videos in a day to speed up that process, then I will try to do so as well. Also, I will try to include as much from both sides of source material as I can, although I can't promise everything. So if there are a few characters from Power Rangers Mystic Force that you don't see in this series, that's simply because I really didn't have a need for them, and there's no reason for me to try to shoehorn everything in just for the sake of nostalgia. I like to try to make a story that makes sense as much as possible. So I do hope you'll keep that in mind as we move forward. But I am looking forward to creating this series and everything else that's going to come along with it. So without further ado, let's get into today's story. As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Sometimes, I ask myself how I got in these situations. If you're wondering who I am, my name is Kazuma Sato. I was a boy living in Japan. I was an expert gamer, to say the least. But my life tragically came to its short, unabrupted end when I heroically saved a girl from being struck by a massive semi-truck. As I was doing... As I was... Okay, Aqua, what's so damn funny? Oh, nothing. It's just that you're telling them all about how you sacrifice yourself to save a girl when that couldn't be further from the truth. Well, shut up! You have nothing to say about this! You dare... Oh, if you really want to know what happened, he didn't get hit by a truck. He had a heart attack because he thought he was. To shut it neat, he was only going to get hit by a tractor. The girl wasn't even hurt at all. It's not funny, Aqua. Shut up. Oh, it is. Even your parents were laughing. It's hysterical. You think it's funny, huh? You think that's funny? Well, do ya? Kazuma, why are you gesturing your fingers at me? Oh, I just would hate for you to feel a draft coming on. You know, you never know when someone might steal! Kazuma! Anyway, as I was saying, following my premature death, I ended up being summoned by this here goddess, or so she calls herself. She's known as Aqua, and in my failed attempt to get revenge, I brought her with me when I was reborn into this new and unexplained world. Ever since then, I have made comrades along the way. A useless mage as well as a sex-crazed crusader. Paired that with a useless goddess and a struggling hero trying to gain skills, it seemed as though we were in for the fight of our lives. I had no idea what was going to be coming our way, and well, the only reason I have been summoned to this world is to defeat this guy named Mordecon, the Devil King. But honestly, with the way my skill level is now, how the hell am I even going to be able to pull that off? We've had our fair share of ups and downs. We've had to fight against giant frogs, a band of flying cabbages, but honestly, nothing could prepare me for what was about to come next. As you listen to our tragic story, a band of misfits looking to save the world, I do hope you'll sit back and enjoy what we have to offer, 'cause I sure as hell won't. Anyway, I think that's all I need to say, so, narrator! Start the story! Yes. Hi everyone, I'm your narrator here, and, well, Kazuma said it best himself. This is the story of the Rangers of Misfortune. Between the Devil King, endless debt, and potential other multiversal threats, who knows what's going to take out our heroes first. Our story begins on a day like any other. It was cold, to say the least. Kazuma, he didn't really feel like being out in the first place, but the others wanted to take a quest, any kind that would do. They still had to figure out their living arrangements for the most part, but honestly, anything could be better than sleeping in the stalls. They decided that hunting down some frogs would be easy enough, more like giant, monstrous, man-eating toads, whose slime was pretty rank. All the same though, Kazuma came up with a game plan, or at least the best of a game plan that he could. There were only a few toads out at the time, and he figured everything would go fairly well. Even if Megumin could only use one explosion, even if Darkness was a useless crusader, and even if Aqua was only good for being live bait, Kazuma figured that at the very least they could take down a few toads, get the money, and munch on some toad meat for dinner. All was going to go seemingly well. That was until they found themselves caught up in a fight that they honestly had no business being caught up in the first place. As they were on the outskirts of the village, they had come face to face with one of the toads. Aqua had been captured once again inside of its mouth, and Kazuma went to go free her with a sword. Darkness, in the meanwhile, wanted to keep the other one occupied, and by occupied, I mean she just found herself enjoying being pushed in and out of its mouth, viewing this as some sick form of foreplay. Megumi had already launched one of her explosions, and well, she was pretty much useless as another toad was coming after her. Kazuma realized that despite everything he had tried to do up until now, his comrades were fairly useless, and there wasn't really much else that he could do for the most part. He would only have to try to save one friend at a time and hope that the others didn't get digested. But there was then another large explosion. one that seemed to occupy everyone's attention, even that of the toads. While they were distracted, Kazuma would take them down one by one, freeing and releasing all of his friends, but they could still hear the explosions far off in the distance. It sounded like major combat and like high-level magic was being used. But still, why would that level of fighting be happening here? It wasn't that it was uncommon for monsters to show up in this area, but still though, this wasn't the type of place where it was a major combat known area. Even the Devil King himself had no real use for this town, so there was no real reason for him to send any of his massive forces. But yet, they were here all the same. As they looked out, they saw a warrior. Kazuma could tell that she was female, and she was dressed in all white. As she fought against what appeared to be some monstrous bat chick, the two of them launching magical attacks at one another. The warrior in white using magic to conjure up various forms of ice, as she was being swarmed by various monsters that were fighting her all around. You're not going to get to this city. You and all of your Hideax. Your Devil King is going to be stopped here and now. Oh, Wiz. When are you going to stop being so stubborn and just come back to us? I already told you, I'm never going back. And I've already warned you that if you try to attack this town again, you're going to be sorry. I don't care if you are the Queen of the Vampires. If you value your life, you will leave here at once. The Vampire Queen and the warrior in white continued their fighting onward. Kazuma was amazed by the action that he was seeing, even by the vampire lady chick. She actually looked pretty hot for a moment, but then again, all of the hot ones in this world were pretty crazy in their own right. As Darkness got a look at the fighting and everything that was happening, she couldn't believe her eyes. It's Hideax! Oh no, oh man, they're the foot soldiers of the Devil King! Oh, I wonder what they'll do if they capture me. No, we are not getting involved in this. Darkness, no, don't! Before he could even stop her, Darkness had already had her sword in hand and she was running towards the horde of Hideax. He didn't tell who was going to be in more danger, her or the monsters. Megami was slowly getting back to her feet as well, but again, she had already used her explosion for the day, so she was pretty much useless and couldn't do anything else. And then there was Aqua. Well, despite being a useless goddess at times, there was one thing that Aqua hated above all else, and that was the undead. And seeing a horde of Hideax, nothing more but zombie foot soldiers of the Devil King, well, that was more than enough to tick her off. Kazuma couldn't stop her either, her long blue hair bellowing in the wind as she ran forward using Return of Dead, destroying a good decent amount of Hideax. To be honest, Kazuma was surprised at times. She couldn't defeat a toad, yet an undead zombie was right up her alley. It often left him rather confused. All the same, Kazuma saw that the fighting was getting a lot closer to him than even he wanted to, and the warrior in white, it appeared as though she was about to be attacked from behind. Kazuma knew he couldn't do absolutely nothing, but still, he was a coward. It wasn't like he had any unique powers in and of itself, and he knew that he needed to do something. As the crazy vampire queen was about to attack the warrior in white, Kazuma came out of nowhere at the last moment. As he lunged forward, his hands outstretched, he saw that the vampire queen had a staff in her hand and was about to strike the warrior in white from behind. Kazuma figured that if there was ever a time to use his ability, it would be now. If he could just steal away the staff, then he could save that defenseless warrior. Kazuma reached out his hand as he summoned all the bit of the magic that he could as he simply yelled out the word steal. A large flash of light would occur. The warrior in white and the vampire queen would be blinded at the same time. They would all crash into one another and fall on the ground, Kazuma quickly standing to his feet looking for what he was holding in his hand. And that in fact was not the staff at all. But instead, it was something else. Something that, honestly, at this point, he wasn't even surprised anymore. As he unballed the cloth in his hand, he realized what he was holding were a pair of silk black panties. As he looked up, he looked at both of the warriors, the warrior in white and the vampire queen. The vampire queen stopped for a moment. Even in her monstrous form, she could still feel that something wasn't right. She gave herself a pat, and then she realized, You dare mock me, boy? You dare defile the vampire queen? Necrola? I demand you giving back my panties! Wait, hold up. Wait, no. I did not mean to. Oh God. Wait, please, no! The vampire queen raised up her staff, preparing to stab Kazuma. Kazuma did not feel like dying again, and honestly, he felt as though this one was going to be very painful and personal. But at the last moment, he was stopped and saved by the warrior in white once again, as she pushed back the vampire queen, warning her to leave this area now. Looking around and seeing that her army of Hideax had been defeated, she realized she had no choice but to leave. As she flew away, trying her best to hide her shame, she turned back and warned that she was going to get her one day. And that boy, he was dead the next time they met one another. As she flew off into the distance, the warrior in white would turn back to see the ones who had tried to help her in the battle. She revealed herself to be none other than Wiz. Kazuma was shocked by this. He asked Wiz where she got this type of power from, and why on earth was she getting into a fight with the vampire queen? Of course, Aqua, on the other hand, was not really too fond to see Wiz at all. Wiz was half lich. She was half human and half undead as well. You see, Wiz was the daughter of a priestess as well as an anti-priestess. That being that one was a undead warrior that turned to the light of good, and the other one was a archpriestess. Her name was Udana. Wiz was the product of this, and for some time she served the Devil King. She kind of felt like she had to because her father served, but after a while, she felt as though she didn't really have a need to anymore. Her father was a great warrior in his own right. He was feared throughout the lands, known as the Lone Wolf Korag. Although his life came to an end just a few millennia ago, she still looked up to him fondly, and out of respect, she served the Devil King for some time. Although the only thing she ever did was maintain the barrier. After a while though, she felt like she could do better with her life, and she opened up a shop in a small town. She gave her barrier duties over to Necroli, who was the queen of the vampires, and she wasn't too fond of this, as her and Wiz were actually good friends to a certain extent. After this though, she left, went back to do her own thing. She followed in her mother's footsteps, and just decided to protect the people. Of course, the Devil King wanted to have Wiz return, but Wiz stated that she had no intentions on ever returning. She instead would serve as the White Queen, the one of whom would serve as the defender of this town and its people. She would fight off the hordes of Hideax and other monsters that were sent. It wasn't like the Devil King was really sending his best after all. I mean, if he really wanted Wiz that badly, then he would send a top general or two at least. Not that Necroli wasn't a good fight, but still though, in the end they were pretty even in power, although Wiz held the slight advantage. All the same though, the Devil King had other things to worry about, and this town really didn't do much for him. So there was no real reason to try to conquer it or take it over. But still, it didn't stop adventurers from trying to bring him down, although it was always pointless. As Wiz explained all of this to Kazuma and the others, Kazuma was more perplexed about that power-up. How was she able to do what she did? Well, Wiz explained that she would tell them more, that she wanted to go back to the shop to rest and replenish her strength, as it took a lot out of her to fight against that horde this time around. As they had gone back to Wiz's magic shop, they all sat for tea as Wiz explained where she had gotten her powers from. You see, in this universe, the Mystic Power Rangers did exist. They were able to tap into a magical source of energy, what we know as the morphing grid. They had existed for a long time, but eventually they faded into legend. Of course, the current Devil King that was reigning wasn't the original Devil King either, he was actually just the son. The original Devil King had been defeated long ago by the other Mystic Rangers, although both sides were sadly destroyed in the process. Because of this, Wiz had inherited the White Ranger power from her mother, Udana, taking on her abilities with ice magic and conjuring that to her strongest abilities. But other than that though, she was basically the only ranger. She had tried to find other ones that were suitable and capable of joining her in her fight, or at least being capable of defending the town, since Wiz had other things she wanted to do. It wasn't that she was shaking her responsibility, no, but at the same time, Wiz knew that she could use all the help that she could get, but she hadn't found anyone that was suitable enough to take the other powers. That was until today. Seeing how Kazuma and his friends were all able to fight off the Hideax even without Ranger power, it meant that they had potential. Of course, Kazuma asked how that was even possible, since as an adventurer, even with his level, he wasn't as high as some of the more powerful adventurers here. But Wiz explained that when it came to that sort of thing, level had nothing to do with it. She had seen top level adventurers get destroyed by Hideax, and that actually scared Kazuma a great deal. If even the high level adventurers didn't want to deal with them, then what business did they have getting involved in this nonsense? But then Kazuma stopped and thought for a moment. Power Ranger. Power Ranger. He turned over to Aqua and he asked her a question. In Kazuma's world, as he had come from Japan, they had a team known as the Super Sentai. Of course, it was just a TV show, but he had to note that there were similarities. That's when Aqua explained that what was fictional in some worlds were actually real in others. This caused Kazuma's jaw to absolutely drop and hit the floor. Sure, there were cartoons and shows in his world. There was one about a boy who ate a magic fruit that gave him the ability to stretch like rubber, one about a boy that had a fox yokai inside of him, another about a guy whose hair could turn from black to gold and he could transform. But of course, these were just cartoons. But now Aqua was telling him that these were other places, other worlds that existed. He then asked, was there a multiverse? Then she explained that there was. That was how they got here in the first place. Kazuma then looked at her with anger and contempt. He could have gone and been reborn in another fictional world, where he could have actually gotten powers and been capable of doing something. But then Aqua warned that that was random, and he had no idea what he would get. And if he wasn't careful, he could be on the wrong end of history. Kazuma asked what she meant by this, and Aqua explained that she's seen the worst. She's seen people have fiery holes stuck through their chests. She's seen people go deranged and slaughter their entire clans. She's seen people have their planets blown up. She's seen people sealed away for all eternity. She's seen people ripped apart by demons. All and all. And for Kazuma, it would have been the luck of the draw. Sure, he could have been reborn as the world's protagonist, but he could have also been reborn as the world's father. To be honest, this was probably the safest place he could have been taken to. But still, Kazuma was left confused and dazed though. What exactly were they supposed to do now? Should they take on this responsibility? For Aqua, she just wanted the Devil King defeated so she could get back to heaven as quickly as possible. And if this was going to get the job done, then that's what they were going to do. Of course, she didn't like the idea of working with Wiz necessarily, but if Wiz was on their side and going to help them out, then she saw no reason to turn her down. Wiz was happy to hear this, as she ran into the back before coming out with a chest. As she unlocked it, releasing the seal that had been placed, inside were a set of wands. She pulled out 5. There was pink, yellow, red, green, and blue. Each one had property over a special element. For pink, it was wind. Yellow was lightning. Blue was water. Red was fire. And green was nature. Kazuma looked at the mystic wands, wondering which one he should take. But before he could get a chance to, Aqua, Darkness, and Megumi had already taken the ones they wanted. Aqua grabbed the blue one. She was the goddess of water, so it only made the most logical sense. Megumi grabbed fire. Fire, explosions, it could take her to the next level, and she really wanted that. Darkness, she grabbed lightning. Electrocution, shocking, BDSM. This left Kazuma with either pink or green, and he wasn't about to trounce around like the pink warrior. No. He also saw another one though. It was purple. He wanted to grab it, but Darkness wouldn't let him. She explained that the purple one was off limits. It was the one that her father used. Of course, Kazuma believed that she didn't want to give it up for sentimental values. But no, that wasn't the case at all. You see, while her father was a good guy, he was still a guy that used dark power and energy, something that Kazuma didn't have. She explained that if Kazuma tried to use it, his body would disintegrate and he would burn away to ash. You see, only someone who had darkness inside of them could be capable of using this power. Upon realizing this, Kazuma saw that he had no choice but to grab the green one. To be honest, he didn't mind green. It was already with its aesthetic anyway. Now that they had already taken their powers, it was time for their training to begin. Of course, Kazuma had no idea what their training would entail, but Wiz explained that this was going to boost their power beyond compare. To be honest, with these powers, they could do a great deal of good for the town. Kazuma, thinking that this was the part where his hero's journey was now going to begin, this was the type of stuff he was looking for. They went out into the outskirts of the village, standing in an open field, where Wiz would demonstrate how they were to use their wands. They would use the phrase, magical source, mystic force. Holding their wand into the air, they would channel their magic and that would allow them to transform. Everyone would nod and agree, as they would all use the same chant together at once. Sparks of explosions would go off all around them, and before they knew it, they had managed to unlock the power. It wasn't all that difficult since, first, you had to believe in magic, which was something they all did since this was the world that they lived in, and they all had a decent high enough level to be able to do so. Aqua transformed into the blue Mystic Ranger, Megumi, the red Mystic Ranger, Darkness, the yellow Mystic Ranger, and Kazuma, the green Mystic Ranger. The four Rangers now stood together. They were shocked to see and feel the level of power that they had. Then, that's when Darkness revealed more of what they were capable of. She created a large block of ice out of thin air and dropped it on them. Kazuma held up his hands instantly. He was afraid that this was going to be the end for him. But to his shock, he could hold it. Well, they were all holding it together, but still, they were capable of doing this. He didn't think that they could. Were they really this powerful when they were morphed up? This was phenomenal. That's when Wiz would explain that in their morphed forms, their strength, speed, stamina, all that took a major increase. They were capable of doing things they weren't before. She even told Darkness to fire off an explosion. Darkness aimed to an open field nearby where no one could be harmed. As she said the incantation, magical spell circles would form all around, but now they were a dark crimson red. A large bright explosion would go off, stronger than any one that she had made before. But to her surprise, she was still standing. She didn't run out of power. Although she felt as though she had lost a good deal of strength, she was still standing. That's when Wiz explained that the amped power from their morphed abilities allowed them to be able to do what they could in even greater fashion than before. Although she would explain to Megami, due to her current level, she was about at 66% of her current power after one explosion. Kazuma, hearing this, realized that basically Megami got a buff, so that now instead of doing one explosion, she could do at least up to 3. Darkness pulled out her sword. As she channeled her mystic energy, lightning started to crackle through the sword rather quickly. She focused on a tree nearby and moved with a quickness. She was actually able to strike it and cut it in half. It caused Darkness to be very excited. She was actually able to hit something now. Kazuma then looked over to Aqua. Aqua summoned that of Requiem, that being the fist of the goddess. As she struck at a boulder, it actually exploded. Kazuma couldn't believe his eyes. In the span of one day, he went from useless comrades to a team that was actually capable. It almost made him want to cry. But now, it was time for Kazuma to see what he could do. He pulled out his staff that was by his side as well. It could morph between staff/axe form as well as sword form. He put it into sword mode and pointed it forward. He wanted to see what was going to happen. That's when the grass started to grow. Kazuma looked rather unimpressed. Growing grass? Was that really all he could do? Just growing grass? But then, something else happened. The grass kept growing, and growing, and growing, until eventually, the grass started to reach heights taller than even the trees. It just kept growing. Kazuma had to stop it. He wasn't sure what to do. With one slice of icy wind, Wiz would cut it down. She explained that Kazuma had command over nature itself, that being things like grass, vegetation, all the works. He could use it to his advantage. Kazuma wondered if that was really an all-powerful skill, but Wiz would explain that that was indeed powerful. As most of the land itself was a forested area in nature, that meant that he could basically control the terrain in the tide of battle. Kazuma looked at her happily, thinking that with a little bit of training, and with a little bit of his ingenuity, he could make good use of this power. As the 4 rangers now stood together, they would hear trembling coming off in the distance. It was another horde of Hideax. Kazuma and the others stood ready, as Wiz told them that this was a chance to see what they could do. Kazuma led the charge with his sword. As he pointed it forward, he would cause grass along with other tree and vines to start growing from underground, grabbing and holding the Hideax in place so he could cut them down. Aqua would use a powerful Return of Dead, a blue wave of mystic energy, causing the zombified Hideax to be forced to be put to rest. Darkness would use her now acquired speed, striking them down with her sword, and feeling pleasure from the discharge of electrical energy. Before the remaining bunch, everyone cleared and moved out of the way, as Megami chanted, "Darkness, darker than dark, blacker than black, I beseech thee, hear forth my cry, my red mystic fury, and allow me to summon forth the greatest of all magic. I now call on to the power of my crimson fury, and I unleash all of my passion. Explosion!" A large burst of fiery red explosion, pure in flame, like that of the dragon itself, burned away and destroyed the remaining force of the Hideax. causing a crater even larger than the first. And Megumi, while tired at only 33%, was still standing. Looking at what they were able to do, Wiz was now happy. Happy to see that her friends were capable after all. As Kazuma looked back to her, he realized that with this, they were actually capable. They could do it. They could really do it. Of course, they were going to have to work on a lot of other skills, get rid of some bad habits, but now they actually had some hope. Or so they thought. You see, the explosion, it was effective. A little too effective. And Aqua, that attack she launched, well, she didn't control the range necessarily. Then there was Darkness with her lightning attack, and there were some stray bolts that shot off in the direction of the city. And Kazuma, well, his vines and entanglements, they kind of started an overgrowth problem. Looking at all the damage that had been caused, well, they had some paying off to do. That's when Kazuma had a sinking feeling, almost like that of an ominous warning in the pit of his stomach. For all of the good fortune they had built up, it felt as though something was wrong. Sure, the powers were great and all, but he had this weird feeling like this was somehow going to lead to even worser shenanigans down the road. All in all, they thanked Wiz, and now they had to leave, as they had a lot of debt that they needed to pay off, meaning that now they had to start taking some missions. But still though, the quests were a bit easier, since they had the power now to back up a lot of the things that they couldn't do before. But still, as wintertime rolled around, the quest became less and less. Everyone was shut in at home just avoiding the cold. They had summed up a good amount of money, and for a while they just decided to rest. Darkness decided to go back home to do some own personal training, and God knows what else. Aqua, well, she decided to sleep in since she had the time. So Kazuma and Megumi, well, they went to go test off their powers somewhere else. There was a castle far off, and since no one was occupying it, they thought that they could just use that and use it as test practice. Well, Megumi really. Kazuma just worked on creating and using the different elements of nature with the trees nearby. But Megumi, she would launch off 3 hard explosions on that castle every single day. They did it no matter what the weather was. It got to a point where it started to become that of the game. Megumi couldn't get enough of her new power. She was pushing herself more and more, so much so that she eventually leveled up. And now instead of doing 3 explosions a day, she could do it up to 4 times. Of course, the more that it got divided, it felt a little less impactful. But still, the explosions were powerful enough to say the least. Another benefit for their powers was that they could sense magical energy now, so they could tell how powerful something was whenever they went up against it. One fine afternoon, as our 4 heroes were sitting in the guild, wondering what their next moves were going to be, Aqua was imploring that they just go and attack the Devil King now. However, Wiz warned them not to do that. For as powerful as they were, compared to the Devil King, they were still incredibly weak. She was the strongest of all of them, and even she wouldn't try to take on a task like that. If they tried to take on the Devil King the way they were now, they'd be destroyed. And for Kazuma, he didn't feel like dying anytime soon. Everything seemed peaceful, and to be honest, Kazuma was preparing to just go back home and go to sleep. That was until an emergency notice was placed, and all the adventurers were told to gather outside to the entrance of the town. As they made their way to the gate, they saw far off in the distance an army of Hideax, and leading them was none other than a headless knight, with his helmet being held in his hands. They could sense the mystic energy being given off by him, and it was not something to be taken lightly. The Headless Horseman looked ominously towards the crowd. Kazuma, Darkness, Megami, and Aqua, they could sense his power level, and it was not something to be taken lightly. As he looked towards them all, his anger began to flare as he yelled, "Which one of you idiots have been blowing up my castle? I only came here to just watch over the Providence. I was told that there wasn't anyone here powerful enough to do anything. And yet every day, every freaking day, 3 large explosions keep going off. Now I want to know, who the hell's responsible?" The moment Kazuma heard this, he and his friends all looked around, because they had realized, for just as Kazuma feared, these powers had now gotten them in more trouble than he could have possibly realized. This concludes Konosuba, Mystic Rangers of Misfortune, Part 1. As always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we now begin our 5-part special of What If Captain America Was in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures? JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, The First Avengers. Anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.